I heard two stories this week that I would like to share with you. One is a few years old, even though I just heard it, and the other one just happened 2 weeks ago. Both are true. The first one is about a Chick-fil-A store owner in Birmingham, Alabama. It was the middle of winter, and even in Alabama, it gets cold. It was especially cold this day when a homeless man came into the restaurant carrying all of his earthly possessions on his back and asked if he could do some work for some food. We hear so many stories where the person is immediately escorted out of the place. But this restaurant and this store owner were not typical. He immediately went to get a chicken sandwich and fries. As he waited, he noticed the man was rubbing his hands together. Mark, the owner, walked over to the table where he was doing some paperwork, picked up his own gloves, and gave them to the man. He noticed the man's coat was too thin for this weather and gave the man his own coat. The food came, the man thanked him and left. The whole encounter lasted a few minutes. This isn't the first time Mark and his restaurant helped others. The previous winter, when thousands of cars were stranded on the highway in a blizzard, Mark and his crew handed out free sandwiches. This is Chick-fil-A, a corporation in business to make a profit. The same restaurant chain that is closed on Sundays, possibly one of the most profitable days of the week. No Sunday football orders, no Super Bowl party orders. The founders of Chick-fil-A believed that Sunday is the Lord's Day and should be to glorify God. The second story may not be as impressive, but tells the same story of helping strangers. This story about Terry Bradshaw was covered on Fox NFL Sunday, and I believe he really didn't know the story was coming up. He looked sincerely surprised. Terry was in a small convenience store in Gainesville, Texas, when the person parked next to him couldn't get his car started. Bradshaw went back into the store and purchased jumper cables. It only took a minute, and when the car started, Bradshaw threw his arms up in the air and yelled, "Touchdown," before handing the man the jumper cables and driving away. This entire event was captured on video and went viral. The young man had no idea who was helping him until he came back into the store and was told, "Do you know who that was?" A small kindness from a 4-time Super Bowl champion, a man with a net worth of $45 million. As they played the tape on the sports show, Terry just looked at his co-anchors and said, "I don't know what the big deal is. The guy just needed a jump." Nice stories. I promise to tie them into today's gospel. Do you know what the Boy Scout motto is? Be prepared. I think everybody knows that. Even I do, and I was never a Boy Scout. But I just always knew that. But I wondered what the Girl Scout motto was, so I looked it up. Do you know what the Girl Scout motto is? Be prepared. It's the same thing. Be prepared. They must know something we don't. I think today's gospel could be about being prepared. I think we hear this message in Matthew's gospel when we hear the parables of the talents. This parable is urging us to be ready for the master's return. Jesus is that master who went on a journey when he ascended to heaven. After a long time, a time we do not know, he will return to judge us. Next week, we hear the gospel from Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46, the judgment of the nations. When we will be separated into sheep and goats. We will be judged against whether we fed the hungry Jesus, or gave drink to the thirsty Jesus, or welcomed him, or clothed him, or visited him when he was sick or was in prison. Of course, we do these 6 things for Jesus when we do them for the least of our brothers. This judgment is not far off, certainly not that far off that we can wait. It will happen at the judgment of the nations or at the moment of our deaths. The 3 servants were entrusted with the master's possessions, each according to their ability. The master then went on a journey. The servants did not know when the master would return, but immediately the one who was given 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5. Likewise, the second servant who received 2 talents made another 2. But the man who received 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and buried his master's money. Now, a talent is a great deal of money. A talent was equal to 30,000 denarii. A denarius was equal to a day's wage. The 30,000 denarii were equal to 82 years of wages. So today, at an average salary of $50,000, it would make the 5 talents worth $20 million. So we're talking about a lot of money. After a long time, the master returned. The first 2 servants came forward and showed the master that they had doubled his money. The master said the exact same thing to both of these servants, even though one of them was perceived as having a greater ability since he was given 5 talents versus 2 talents for the other servant. The master told each of them, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Since you were faithful in small matters, I will give you great responsibilities. Come, share your master's joy." They were both prepared for their master's return. We often hear that we should be prepared. Last week we heard about the 5 foolish virgins who were not prepared for their master's return. When they called for the Lord to open the door, he said in reply, "Amen, I say to you, I do not know you. Therefore stay awake, for you know neither the day nor the hour." We are told, "Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on which day your Lord will come." Be sure of this, if the master of the house had known the hour of the night when the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake. So too you must be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come. There's the story of the rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He built larger barns and planned to rest, eat, and be merry. But God said, "You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong?" But of that day or hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. You do not know when the time will come. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. The third servant was not prepared. He buried the talent that he received. He explained, "Master, I knew you were a demanding person, harvesting where you did not plant and gathering where you did not scatter. So out of fear, I went off and buried your talent in the ground. Here it is back." It almost sounds reasonable. Why risk so much? But Jesus said they were distributed to each according to his ability. Therefore, each servant received just the right number of talents to match his ability. He wants us to use our abilities. Jesus does not want us to be afraid of him. He does not want us to squander our abilities. He wants us to trust him, to love him. The third servant was wicked and lazy because he didn't do anything with the talent. He was given only one because that was according to his ability. He would have received the same reward as the first 2. God gives us our talents. He doesn't tell us how to use them, but he expects us to use them. These riches aren't material goods that we receive. These riches aren't gold or silver. Maybe these riches are truly what is valuable: baptism, reconciliation, Eucharist, confirmation. Jesus doesn't force us to take advantage of these riches, but he expects us to use them. Do we use the gift of the sacraments? Have we forgotten our baptisms? Do we bury the sacrament of reconciliation? Do we miss the Eucharist? Have we stopped our religious education after confirmation? Was the Chick-fil-A store owner prepared? Was he watching carefully for a homeless man? No, when this story went viral, Mark didn't understand what he did was anything special. He thought anybody would do the same thing. He wasn't prepared for who was going to walk into the restaurant next, but he was ready to use his talents to help whoever walked in. He was prepared for the next needful person. Was Terry Bradshaw prepared to help anyone with a dead battery? Was he driving around looking for cars that wouldn't start? He didn't even own jumper cables. He was prepared to help whoever crossed his path that needed help. He also was amazed that anyone thought this was anything more than a person helping another person start a car. I feel like I owe you a story, so let me tell you another story. This one may not be true. An elderly woman who had just finished shopping and returned to her car found 4 men inside. She dropped her dropping bags and drew out a handgun. She pointed the gun toward the men and screamed at them to get out of her car. They flew out of there like crazy and ran away. Somewhat shaken, she put her gun away, picked up her bags, and got into the front seat. But for some reason, the key would not fit into the ignition. Then it dawned on her, this was not her car. Her car was in the next row. So she found her car and drove down to the police station to turn herself in. As she told her story, the officer behind the desk, who was about ready to fall out of his chair laughing, pointed her to another desk where 4 men were reporting a carjacking by a little old woman with a handgun. Now she was prepared. Are we prepared for what God has prepared for us? Are we good and faithful servants, or are we wicked and lazy servants? Will we hear the words, "Come, share your master's joy"? Will we hear, "Throw this useless servant into the darkness outside"? Or will we hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant"?